If you had $1 million in equity, would you use it? Or would you just let it sit there and rot?
Welcome to the show. Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power.
Welcome to Your Ultimate Life. This episode is about that hidden equity. This podcast is a labor of love that I've been doing now for more than 6 years. It's so much fun. The more I do it, the more fun it is. You know why? Because I get to dig into my own story and the stories of all the guests and find out that hidden equity. Now, equity is a word, it's a word we use in real estate and investments and all kinds of things. I want to talk a little bit about what it is. So equity, first of all, we think of real estate. So you buy a house, maybe you bought it for $400,000 and you own it for a while and now it's worth $600,000. Maybe when you bought it at $4, you put $100 down. Now it's worth $6. Get $300,000 in equity. But that equity just sits there. It doesn't do any good until you sell the house or refinance the house and incur more debt, and then you can pull out the equity. Shark Tank is another place that you think about equity. So Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or one of these shows like that, it's a place where entrepreneurs come on and they pitch a product or service. And here's what happens. The dragons in Dragon's Den or the sharks in Shark Tank, they'll ask some questions. How many have you sold? How much does it cost to make? What agreements do you have already? How long does it take? Just a bunch of questions about that. And the whole point is, whoever the entrepreneur is has built a product or service they think has great potential, and they're looking for an investor, and usually they're trying to buy some equity. So they'll say, I need $100,000 to increase production, and give you 10% equity, or $1 million. I need $1 million or 5 million, and I'll give you some amount of equity. The sharks are always looking for a good deal. So there's always an argument about it and so forth. And if you've seen those episodes, you know what I mean. But here's the interesting thing. Again, even if they get equity, whatever percentage it is, it's not of any use until there's an IPO, if it were to somehow go public, or the company is sold, there's a buyout. Then the equity is realized, and that's a percentage of ownership. I want to talk about some different equity that's more fun and more valuable, right? And that is the equity in your story, right here. Your story is hidden equity. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there's 3 kinds of equity in your story. Now, what do I mean by your story? Well, excuse me, what it isn't is a memoir. It isn't an autobiography. It isn't a chronology of, I was born here and raised in difficult circumstances and poverty, and I didn't even know I was poor. My brothers and sisters, we just had fun, and that's not what I'm talking about your story. It might be interesting, and someone that's had an interesting life and has become famous for some reason. It is interesting, and we read their autobiographies or biographies written by other people telling a story, the chronological series of events. I'm not talking about that either, although the equity in your story does come from the experiences of your life. So here's the value. Most people that I talk about or talk to, and I get to talk to a lot. I set up my life so I'm talking to a lot of people every week, new people. I'm in some networking groups and some masterminds and other collections of people that encourage you to meet people. I just got 5 new introductions from the leader of a group that I belong to, and I'm so excited. I haven't sent the emails out, but I'm going to send them out today and say, hey, let's connect and see what magic we can create. As a result of that, I talk to a lot of new people every week. 5, 10, 15, and it's usually on Zoom. Sometimes it's in person, but mostly on Zoom. And here's what's fun. I get to learn about who they are. And guess what that always includes? People always want to say what they're doing. Well, I've got a product. I've got this. I create that. That's fine. What I'm really interested in is, how did you get where you are? The story I'm interested in is the story of your becoming. That doesn't include every event of your life, or even most of them. There are certain pivotal events that shape what we think and who we are today. Like if you started thinking right now and you said, and I said, write down the 5 or 6 biggest events, you'd quickly be able to come up with a list of big pivotal events that really left a lasting impression on you. So we're looking at those, not just 4 or 5, but 10, 20, 30. And they're events that usually are struggles, they're disappointments, they're hard things, sometimes they're victories, but they shaped you in a powerful way to get where you are. Okay, so there's 3 kinds of equity you're sitting on. The first is impact equity. Your story, the story of your becoming, how you got where you are, is a vehicle for impact. What that means is, really simply, you can have an effect on people. Now, you and I have both heard speakers that speak at conferences or keynote, wherever they are, online or in person, and they tell stories, story of their lives, and we sit there and we're impressed with that story. It has an impact on us. So I saw a Facebook post today of a friend of mine who talked about such an event. He was recalling, he's a speaker, and he runs some masterminds, and he does some coaching and stuff also. But the story he told was of an event way earlier in his career, 15, 16, 18 years ago, I don't know, where he held an event. And 3 people came. He had an auditorium set up with a couple hundred chairs, right? 3 people. 1 left after a few minutes. The other, as soon as he was done, out. And the 3rd one said, good job. Okay. Now that could have been a heartbreaking blow, like, I'm never going to do this. It'll never last. What was I thinking? Nobody gives a crap, that kind of thing, right? And they were all cruising in. They'd done some marketing and marketed and expected 150 or 200 people there. 3. Well, that event could have shaped him in a very negative way. I'll never do this, made him fearful and so forth. Instead, adjustment, pivot, choices, reevaluation, et cetera, et cetera. So that was an event that shaped him. And he's using that story to share with others. Why? Because the possibility is someone else, I read it, others may read it and think, you know what, I was about to give up. I couldn't, wow, look at that. Maybe I can, that kind of feeling. That's impact equity. And here's a truth. Most people believe their stories don't matter much. They don't have big, strong addictions or death or illness or bankruptcy or whatever. So I got nothing. That's just not true. You do. You have it. You haven't mined it, you haven't organized it, but you have it. So impact equity is the first thing. The second kind of equity that you're sitting on and wasting is income equity. Because when you take what you have learned through these events that have shaped your life and you package it and you turn it into help for people, you create something out of it, not just telling stories, that is income. And I personally have made millions, and I know lots of folks that have made millions using the stories of their lives. And they, again, don't have to be fall off the mountain, near death, whatever. You have plenty. It's what's one of the most fun things I do is I get to talk to people and I mine with them the stories. Tell me how you got here. Tell me this, tell me that. What makes this so important to you? Without exception. Amazing stories. Amazing. That they didn't even think were amazing. So income, impact equity, income equity. And the other one is feel good or fulfillment equity. So here's what I know. every person that I talk to, and maybe it's the nature of the groups that I belong to or whatever, or maybe I'm just blessed, but every person that I talk to says, I've had struggles and I have success and I want to give back. I want to do something to help. I want to serve, and then they'll tell me the community, underprivileged kids or older retired folks or people that have started businesses or people that are in relationship struggles or people that have health challenges. I want to serve that group. And the desire to serve comes 100% from their own experience. I was discouraged. I couldn't do this, couldn't do that. Then I found a way. Wow, I did it. Let me share with you how I did it because maybe it'll help you too. All right. You've seen a million of those. You probably bought a bunch of those. So have I. And most of them are very sincere and really good. There's a few shysters, but most of them are good and they're sincere. Whether they work for you or me or not depends almost entirely on our willingness to execute. But that's a different episode. You're sitting on equity. This is a call to use your equity. You're sitting on a gold mine you have not claimed, and it's costing you cash. Now, your ultimate life, this whole podcast that I've been doing now for 6 years, is about purpose, prosperity, and joy. And you can see really clearly and quickly, your purpose will come from the story of your life because it's the things you've lived and the things that mean the most to you. So your purpose will fly right out of the story of your life, the story of your becoming. Purpose, prosperity, and joy. Prosperity depends on you choosing to do the work, package it into some way. And joy is that feeling of fulfillment. So that's how I describe it. I live that every day. Well, I'm doing this podcast and I'm at now episode 1100 and whatever. Wonderful. You're sitting on that kind of equity and it's your choice to use it. Here's another thing. You're sitting on it not because it doesn't have value, but because you haven't built a structure. You haven't analyzed it and figured out what it can do. So your story is hidden equity, and it's sitting like a pile of untapped gold on the balance sheet of your life. Now, here's why most people miss it. Here's the stories I hear over and over again about why people miss or dismiss or don't mind this equity. You confuse familiarity with insignificance. So you've lived that story one day at a time. You've been up the valleys and the struggles and, it was incremental. And so you're like, it's not that big of a deal. So confusing familiarity with insignificance. It feels normal to you. Well, I just got up every day and did this. And so what? Who cares? It's not that big of a deal. Therefore, it doesn't have any value. Not true. I can make you a solemn promise. Your story might be the exact roadmap someone needs out of the swamp of whatever, struggle in life, financial, emotional, mental, relationship, etc., etc. Your very story, the choices that you made, the things that you found valuable will be the roadmap for someone else, but only if you share it. Another thing is because you lived it, you minimize it. Well, I did this and, it was one day at a time. I hear that so often from people. And I want to hug them because I'm already in love with them because of their story. You might think, well, I survived it, so we stopped seeing it. I did that. Oh, man, I did that. I remember getting frustrated when I was thinking about this in the early years of before I was writing much. And in 2009, 10, I started all this whole thing of my coaching and writing started in 2007. So 19 years ago. And I started thinking, I have nothing. I started out thinking I have nothing. Why? Because I'd lived it. One thing at a time, struggles, addictions, suicide attempts. Today that I know are big and huge, but at first I felt just like that. I survived it, so whatever. I was looking for something else. Here's another thing that is so important. I want you to hear this. Nobody taught you how to create or extract value from it. And by extract, I don't mean greed, but pull value from it. And I'm talking about nobody taught you how to create impact or income or personal fulfillment. No one showed you how to do that. So it doesn't seem like anything to you. We're going to change that right now. So maybe you want to ask yourself some questions. What kinds of thought, advice, or questions do people often come see me and ask about? What are the natural things I feel really good about helping people with? 100% is going to come from your life experience. Here's another question. What thing have you made it through that changed how you live life? So, for example, let's say you have a fabulously terrible illness. I know, fabulously terrible, bad juxtaposition, but you have a terrible illness. And, you're threatened with fatality, maybe. It's really serious. And then you survive. Now, there's lots of different ways to react to that. Some people may be resentful and curse God or whatever situation gave them the illness and lament the lost time and be raging about that. That's possible. Another reaction to that would be gratitude for life. I'm now grateful for every single minute I have. An additional attitude might be, because I'm grateful, I've changed completely what's important. I used to think big cash earning, get up in the company, whatever. That was the only thing that mattered. Now I realize relationships and love and friendship and kindness and all that, forgiveness. Oh, I know that's important. So those are questions you can ask when you look at the events of your life. How are you living differently because of those events? And those are the core gold nuggets. Now, another way to think about it is, what problem can you solve right now that you couldn't solve, that once seemed impossible, that nearly broke you? I'll give you an example of that out of my own life, but I've seen it with others. Mental illness, depression. I'm not good enough. I can't cut it. I drowned in that swimming pool, in that swamp, in that sinkhole for decades. My reaction to that drowning was to fight furiously and prove I was okay. I made lots of money, but it was still deeply miserable, was not happy, and hated myself. Bad habits and all kinds of stuff followed. Drugs and, the stories that go with that kind of thing. Today, I know how to solve that problem. I know how. Why? Because I survived. I found and figured out. I got finally the right help. And here's another really important thing. Often people, you maybe, struggled through something without much help. Or it came in fits and starts and a little here and a little there, and it wasn't organized. And finally, you figured out how to assemble those little bits of help into a thing that worked for you. And now you know a system. Well, you could do this. I wish I'd known this first, and then this, and then this, and then this. And you can put together something that nobody else can because you walked the road. So those are things to think about when you're considering whether or not you're missing or how much you're missing that gold mine you're sitting on. Now, I want to talk now for a few minutes about what a story contains. Because it's not just a memoir. I was born here and I grew up here and the weather was good and I had this experience in middle school or grade school, middle school, high school, college, a broken relationship, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. And then someone says, oh, how interesting. That's not what it is. It is intended to contain those significant events in your life that mattered to you. Often they're likely mistakes. Often they're also recoveries. This happened to me. Maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was an illness. Maybe it was a betrayal. It wasn't a mistake of yours, except of trusting that person or whatever. So the thing happened, the hurt, the pain, the mistake, the betrayal, the bankruptcy, the illness, whatever it is, it happened to you, and then you recovered. How did you do that? Did you just lay around until suddenly you were recovered? Did you read a book? Did you talk to a priest? Did you go to a meditation retreat? Like, what were the tools that helped you recover? What were the insights that you gained along the way? I'll tell you one of mine and give you an example. And I also one from a client of a client that said to me, I used to believe, and I'm quoting almost, paraphrase a little, I used to believe that my thoughts were real, that everything I was thinking was how stuff really was. I finally learned that my thoughts are just thoughts. What? And that I don't have to believe them. That was an insight that changed powerfully how he related to life. An insight that I have that came from hard-won, battle-tested stuff is that I get to create my life every day at a time. I create my life. I create my being, and I call into existence every experience by how I look at it, interpret it, decide to act or not act, etc. That's an insight. So when you think about your recoveries and your insights, then you're in a position to pull it together in some kind of a framework, an organized pattern, because most of us don't do things in the right order, right? We did this first and then that and then this and ups and downs and all that stuff. When you get done, it's like, dang, I wish I'd done this first and then this and then this, right? And that kind of framework's true whether you're building a business, overcoming a personal challenge, fixing a relationship, leading a multi-million-dollar company, or anything. After the experience, you say, oh, we should have done it in this order. That is priceless. Now, some people say, you know what? There's a million books or programs about whatever it is that you have. But yeah, I'm going to talk about and there's a million of people talking about Well, they are, but they don't have your voice. Your individual experience, your background, your approach is going to resonate with millions of people that no one else can touch or talk to. Why? Because of how you sound and who you are. That's true. It is absolute bulletproof truth. And the question is, are you or I willing to go find those people who need what we have uniquely? Okay, so another thing that comes out of all that is you discover your values. And you might think values come first, and maybe they ought to, but they don't, especially when you're digging yourself out of trouble. I'll give you some examples from my life. Because I hated myself and struggled with depression and then addictions and a bunch of other things, I became a pathological liar. To protect myself, I lied about my addictions, about what I was doing and thinking, and just I became fabulous at it. Nothing to be proud of. As I healed from that and then began writing books and coaching and sharing what I'd learned with others, I realized one of my values is truth, honesty. And so in my own declarations of being, one of them is, I speak only truth. I am my word. I speak only truth. I do what I say. I am who I seem, with no camouflage, duplicity, or guile. Guile's an old word that means sneakiness or something. I just like it. And that's a declaration. Why? Because that is a value that has become so important to me. And consequently, it occupies a very powerful place in my frameworks. I have many, many, many now, probably a dozen that I've created over the years to help with different things, forgiveness and fear and procrastination and self-worth issues and, planning effectively and just all kinds of things, how to create time, how to meditate and use that power, just a whole bunch. But they've all come out of my own experience. So remember, it's not an autobiography. It is earned language that you now have because you walked the road and crawled over the broken glass. It's not a drama dump where you vomit all your problems on the table. It's not the therapeutic overshare where people are like, oh, could you please shut up? It isn't any of that. It is distilled, lived wisdom. Now, most people don't do the distillation. They tell stories and they think maybe somebody will get something out of it. I read a book recently of a client who sent me the book to read, and I love the stories, but there was no distilled wisdom. It was, I'm telling you the stories and maybe you'll figure out some way to have them help you. You can do that, but that is the slow way to create impact, income, and personal satisfaction. It may have been therapeutic to just vomit on the page, but if you really want purpose, prosperity, and joy, you have to do some distillation and help those who might read it. What else it contains is it's an organized transformation, and it contains embodied authority. What does that embodied mean? Embodied is one of my favorite words now, today, but it's also a bit cliche and overused. So if I want to teach health, fitness and nutrition and being healthy, and I'm not talking about an oil-soaked person on stage. I'm just talking about someone who glows, who's healthy, good, healthy weight and strong, etc. If I want to teach that, but I am 50 pounds overweight, I have a sickly pallor about my skin, and I have a couple of chronic things that I'm not handling, that is not embodied authority, right? I'm talking about a thing I've learned about, but I'm certainly not embodying that truth. If, on the other hand, I'm taking care of my body, I'm healthy, and I appear in every way to have that and own that, and that's the energy that I give authentically, then I am embodying that. So your language, because you've walked the path, is absolutely embodied. And that's what's important. All right, now I want to talk about why these hidden equity things stay hidden. And people they die. They die with their gold inside. Most people go through their life, never use the story of their becoming, and that intellectual property, they die with it unused, unmined. All that gold goes to the grave with it. Why? Here's why. We don't create any structure. We don't take the work to find the nuggets of gold. They're there, and we kind of know they're there, and we have stories in our minds about where we learned this, and my grandpa taught me that, and this situation helped me understand this and be more forgiving or loving or careful or whatever. We have these stories in our minds, but they're not organized. Okay, we don't create the language around that. So we might tell the story, but we're not able to do it in a way that is meaningful and connecting. Okay, we don't extract the gold mine as just the raw ore sitting there. And this process is about helping you do that. Now, I'm going to issue you an invitation right now. DreamBuildWriteIt.com. DreamBuildWriteIt.com is the most effective and powerful place in the world, and I say that with absolute certainty, to help you identify, mine, and assemble the powerful events of your life to turn it into impact, income, and fulfillment. Wealth, impact, meaning, any way you want to use those words. And the reason is because that's embodied and lived authority. For me, I have taken several books and turned them into $100,000 many times. And in that, Dream, Build, Write It, I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you how I have turned a book, different books, into money and impact and fulfillment. That's why I'm doing it. All right. Here's what people think. Well, I'm not an author. I'm not a speaker. I don't know how. It's too hard. Somebody else might be able to do that, but not me. Well, as long as you say that, it will be true for you. And they have decided what they know or what they have doesn't matter. They haven't firmly realized it does matter, and I'm going to share it. Unclaimed value doesn't become leverage, powerful leverage, by accident. Never. So let's take some action, shall we? Because if you want to turn it into income, impact, and feeling good, meaning, personal meaning, you have to get a clear message, because if you don't have a clear message, there's no clear value. Imagine if a vacuum cleaner salesman came to the door and said, well, there's a piece of gear, it helps clean the carpet and stuff. And, I don't know. Instead of, what? HEPA filters, 50 million pounds of suction, everything bigger than 2 microns is sucked up and retained in the bag, and whatever the claims are. But if it's not clear, then the value is like muddy. And if the value is muddy, then you can't charge for it. Well, if it picks up some stuff, I'll pay you 59 cents for your vacuum. Yeah, but it's $1,000. Yeah, I don't think so. And of course, if you're undercharging, your life stagnates, your heart stagnates, your vision stagnates and you're frustrated. So we're not going to do that. All right. So let's talk about how to create visible value from your hidden equity. Visible value. First, telling the truth about what happened. Now, at Dream, Build, Write It, and using a book that I have written, no surprise, called The Story Arc, I'm going to show you how to mine your gold mine, mine your life for the nuggets of gold. I'm going to show you how to do that. Telling the truth. Second is extracting the lesson, because events happen and they crush us or they refine us. Sometimes they ruin us and then refine us. But no matter what, you can pull a lesson, but you have to decide to do that. The third thing is to structure the pattern. Okay, what is the pattern that I learned from this? Maybe it was several events. You know how it's like karma says, you keep coming around to the same lessons, right? Until you learn it. I read a Facebook post again today, a different one than the first one I was talking about a guy who, as a kid, was busy with drugs by the time he was 12, like serious heroin and stuff. Violent teenager, went to prison, assault, death, serious injury and death to others. Spent, a couple of decades in prison. And he could have been one of those who got out of jail and recidivism, career criminal, that's it, done. Instead, this person did what I'm saying. He made a choice to learn from intentionally the things that had happened, and then he created himself differently. And gradually he rose to prominence. He's written some books, done some acting in Hollywood, and so forth. And now he stands as an example of someone who mined the story, the occurrences, turned them into value, has now shared them, and has created impact, income, and meaning for himself and others. So tell the truth, extract the nuggets, structure them into something. I call them frameworks, and you have one inside of you, whether you've built it yet or not. Next is to package the message. Okay, a lot of people will they'll tell stories, but they don't know how to package it, or they choose not to package it in some way that I can access. And that means a product or service I can buy. I love talking to people, and when I hear their story, I think to myself, wow, they could sell this in a package, as a book, as a course, both, as a speaking platform, as a series of workshops, as a keynote speaker, as a coach, or having some kinds of programs to help people learn these very lessons that they fought so hard to do, but they haven't organized it into a package so that somebody can access it. I see that all the time. I know someone could help lots of people because I've listened to them and I hear what they do. Well, where can I buy this? I talked to somebody the other day. I interviewed him. Well, I'm building a website. What'll happen when I go there? Well, there's no package of any kind, book, program, something. So packaging is important. And then you have to attach that package to some kind of an offer or a book or a body of work. And those are the steps. Books as a backbone, I find super 58 supers, super powerful. Most strategic asset to make $1 million. Why? Because writing the book forces you to be clear about the message and handle all those things I talked about earlier. You're forced to handle those. Because otherwise the book's boring and stupid, and we don't publish boring and stupid books. So the book sales themselves don't make money. You make, especially on Amazon, they take a big chunk and so forth. Now, one of the fun things is there are new and more effective ways, I would say more important, but more effective ways to use your book to make money and to create relationships and to get emails and work with people and create clients and business and all that stuff. Amazon's the lowest on the list. We have to use it because it's the big dog still, but there's lots of other ways. But anyway, books by themselves don't generally make money. The back end is where the money is. The relationship, the program, that structure that we build with you. Okay. And maybe you want a coaching program. Maybe you want to speak. Maybe you want passive income products that you can market to and you don't have to deliver. All of those are available, but not until you mine your life and do the work first. Clarity is what makes the money. And the more you work on when you mine your life and write the book and then create the products from that, you have absolute bulletproof crystal clarity. You also have absolute bulletproof lived authority, embodied, as I said earlier. You can create easily trust. You know, we say in the internet world, know, like, and trust. When you share your story and the truth, people know you. When you share the truth of your own becoming, the right people, not everybody, but the right people will resonate with you and they will like you. And your authenticity will absolutely create trust. I've seen it over and over again, not only with me, but with many, many clients that I work with. DreamBuildWriteIt.com. Go there right now and sign up. Okay. I offer that 2 or 3 times a year. And whether it's soon or whether it's later in the year, sign up now so that I can help you do that. Because your story deserves to be told. A book, here's what I know from my own experience, and I've written 24. A book is the most strategic, the cleanest way to move from hidden equity into visible authority. Thud. You have a book. You wrote the book. All right, so now let's talk about what to do next. I want you to know exactly what to do. Number 1, stop treating your life, your wisdom, your capability, your power. Stop treating it like nothing. Stop dismissing it. Stop minimizing it. Realize it is the sum and substance. It's all you have. The story of your own life. That's it. I don't care what else you learned how to do. You can talk about that and sell it, and people do. That's get a job, be a doctor, be a lawyer. You learned how to do a skill and you sell that. That isn't the place of fulfillment. It isn't the place of your greatest impact or income either. So stop treating it like it doesn't matter. Here's some questions for you to think about. What are you still dismissing in your own journey that has value? Not to everybody in the world, but to somebody. What overcoming, what story, what decisions, what choices have been in your life that have value, that you're still dismissing? Second question, what part of your story are you still acting like ordinary? That you know, if you really were honest, somebody would say, wow, you did what? What part of your story are you still acting like is ordinary? And here's the kicker. How much money is that dismissal costing you? Now, remember, I said there's 3 kinds of equity. So if I say how much money is that costing you, that's just one. How much impact in the world is it costing you? Over and over, people tell me, I want to do good. I want to give back. I want to help. This is the best way to do it. Yes, you can volunteer in your church and your community and at a soup kitchen and on a food drive and with the boys club and girls club. And those are all wonderful. And I do them. And I encourage you to do that too. Your big help, the greatest value you can offer is the story of who you have become. That's it. And so let's do that. So how much impact has it cost you? How much income has it cost you? And how much fulfillment has it cost you? Your story is not small. It is not small. Your relationship to it is. So remember that. Your story is not small. You can pretend all you want, but your relationship to it is small. Unless you have done this. Now, I have 3 invitations for you. 1, if you already have a story and you're using it and you know it and you want to share, I want to talk to you. YourUltimateLifePodcast.com, okay? Go there, YourUltimateLifePodcast.com, and get the contact form and reach out to me. I want to share your story. That's first. The second thing is if you want help with this, overcoming all those challenges that I listed and turning your story into goldmine, DreamBuildWriteIt.com. Go sign up right now. You can also get a hold of me, YourUltimateLifePodcast.com, with the contact form and tell me what kind of help you need. The third thing is if you know people that have stories about their own journey who should share them, and they're not, I'd love to have them as guests, because my goal in reaching 300 million people isn't just with my message, it is with yours. If I get to help you tell your story, then I'd love to have you as a guest too. But others that have got these stories that are determined to add good to the world, I'd love to share their stories. So again, yourultimatelifepodcast.com contact form, introduce me and let's get their story broadcast to the world to make a bigger difference with more power, more love, and more income for them or you, just because you have shared your love. Now, here's what I can promise you as we wrap today. You have a story. It matters. I love you. I want to help you share that with the world and help as many people as you possibly can. I'm inviting you in several ways to partner with me so that we can create the impact, income, and personal meaning you crave, I crave, we all want, not because we're greedy, but because we're divine beings. We're built to love and serve. And we are most fulfilled when we are doing those things on the road to creating your ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around.
Right here, right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, yourultimatelife.ca. Subscribe. Share.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on the ground.